The phone rang, cutting through the quiet room. I glanced at the screen and froze. 13 missed calls, all from my mother-in-law. My heart sank as I held the phone in my hand, the weight of the situation hitting me harder than I could have imagined. Not now, I thought. Not when I'm still trying to breathe after the loss of my husband, Mark. My mind raced, wondering why Linda, my mother-in-law, would be calling me so relentlessly. Was it something urgent? Was there something else I needed to know? But no. The only thing I could think about was how, just days ago, I had buried the love of my life. How could she call me now, of all times? I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello?" My voice cracked. Martha's voice rang through the phone, cold and demanding, with no sign of the grief I expected. "Where is the $2,700? This month's allowance has not been sent." I blinked, my heart stopping. Could she seriously be asking for money right now, when my world had just collapsed? The cold reality hit me like a slap. I could barely even process it. As I sat there, hearing my mother-in-law's voice crackling through the phone, it felt like time stopped. Losing Mark had shattered everything in my life. My husband, my partner, my everything was gone, and I was left to pick up the pieces. Each day since his passing had felt like walking through a fog, the weight of my grief heavier than I could bear. But here was Martha, demanding money, as if life had just continued without a pause. Before Mark's death, I had always known that our relationship with his mother wasn't easy. She had a way of making everything about her, and it often felt like she saw me as an obstacle rather than a daughter-in-law. Mark always tried to smooth things over, even when I was uncomfortable. He would assure me that things would get better, that his mom just needed more understanding, but I never felt that warmth from her. The first time I met Linda was during our engagement, and her cold, critical gaze made it clear she didn't approve of me. She questioned everything about me, from my looks to my job. Mark was always quick to defend me, but even then, I knew that his loyalty to her was something I would never fully have. As I held the phone now, hearing Linda's demand for money, I realized that nothing had changed. In the middle of my grief, she was only concerned about her own needs. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. "Martha, I, I can't right now. I need time," I muttered. But she wouldn't let me off the hook. She didn't care. Martha had always been a complicated figure in my life. From the very beginning, I had sensed there was something off about the way she acted. She wasn't just my mother-in-law. She was a woman who seemed to always be on the lookout for the next opportunity to get what she wanted, regardless of the circumstances. And what she wanted most of all was money. It didn't take long for me to learn about Linda's financial struggles. She had always been in and out of debt, and I later found out that a lot of it was due to her gambling habits. It wasn't something Mark liked to talk about, but eventually, the truth came out. Even after Mark's father passed away, she couldn't seem to manage her finances, always looking for someone to bail her out. First it was her brother, then it was Mark, and once I entered the picture, I became another source of support for her too. Mark had always been the type of person who wanted to take care of his family. He was a good man, and I loved him for it. But Martha saw his kindness as something to exploit. Her monthly requests for money started when Mark was in his late 20s, not long after his father passed. What began as small amounts of money turned into the $2,000 he was sending her every month. But like most things with Martha, it was never enough. She always needed more. The tension grew between us as the years went on. I couldn't stand how she would call me up, demanding money without any understanding of our situation. Mark never seemed to push back, and I started to feel trapped in a system I had never signed up for. It wasn't just that she needed money, it was the way she made it seem like it was her right, her due. It felt suffocating. I didn't want to argue with Mark about it. I didn't want to cause any more strife, so I reluctantly agreed to send money to Martha each month. We had just moved into a new house, and our financial situation was still settling, but I didn't want to fight. So I kept quiet, sending the money each month, all while hoping that one day she'd finally stop. But that day never came. Instead, the demands kept growing. I couldn't avoid it any longer. The mounting pressure from Linda's demands was wearing on me, and I knew that I needed to talk to Mark about it, especially now that his health was deteriorating rapidly. The truth was, Mark had always taken care of the finances, sending the money to Linda without hesitation. But now, with his illness taking over, I could see the toll it was having on him. He was bedridden, unable to work, and the strain was becoming unbearable. I watched as he grew weaker each day, but somehow, his mother's demands continued. One evening, as we sat together in the quiet of our living room, I finally gathered the courage to ask him the question that had been gnawing at me for months. "Mark, what are we going to do about your mom?" I asked gently, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're not able to work right now, and we're already struggling to make ends meet. I don't know how we can keep sending her the money." Mark sighed heavily and looked away, the weight of the situation clear on his face. "I know, Jennifer. I've always promised her I would help. I can't go back on that, even now." He seemed torn, guilt written all over him. "I understand," I said, trying to hide the frustration that was bubbling inside me. "But she doesn't seem to care about what's happening to us. She never visits you, never offers any help. It's just money, money, money." Mark looked at me, his expression softening. "I know, Jennifer. I'm sorry. I never wanted it to be like this. I thought that if I kept helping her, she'd eventually get better. But maybe I've been too lenient. You're right. I don't know what to do either." As I sat there, feeling the weight of Mark's illness and Linda's relentless demands, I wondered what the future held for us. How could I handle the financial burden without Mark's support? And why, despite everything, was Linda never there when Mark needed her the most? The days after Mark's death felt like a blur. The funeral had been exhausting, emotionally and physically draining, but it was nothing compared to the storm that was about to hit. Grief was still overwhelming me, and I had no idea how to process the loss of my husband. But there was one thing I didn't expect: the phone call from Linda. It came just a few days after the funeral. The screen on my phone lit up with her name, and my stomach turned. I hesitated for a moment, trying to collect myself, but I knew I had to answer. "Hello?" I said, my voice shaking. "Where's the $2,700 for this month?" Linda's voice crackled through the phone, as if nothing had changed. No compassion, no sorrow for the loss of her son. I could feel my heart breaking all over again, but this time, it wasn't just for Mark. It was for me, for everything I had been enduring. "What?" I gasped, almost in disbelief. "Martha, my husband just died, and you're asking for money? Don't you have any respect for what I'm going through?" But Linda didn't miss a beat. "I don't care about all that. I'm still waiting for the allowance. You know how it works. I need the money, Jennifer. It's your responsibility now." The words stung like a slap across my face. I could feel my anger rising, my grief giving way to frustration. How could she be so callous? It was as if Mark's death hadn't even registered for her, and she was more concerned about her next payment than the life she had just lost. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was speaking to her or myself. "I can't keep sending you money. Mark's gone, and things are changing." Linda, as always, was quick to put the pressure back on me. "Well, if Mark's gone, then you're the one who needs to handle it. It's your job now to take care of things." I stood there, staring at the phone in disbelief, the weight of what she was asking me to do crashing down on me. My husband had just died, and here she was, demanding money. I couldn't process it. I was struggling with my grief, and she was pushing me further into a corner, as if nothing had changed. The tension between us reached a boiling point, and I had no idea how I was going to handle it. Mark and I had spent the last few weeks talking about the difficult situation with Linda, and despite everything, we had never come up with a solution that felt right. But one night, as Mark's health continued to deteriorate, he suggested an idea that left me both shocked and conflicted. "What if we just cut ties with her, Jennifer?" Mark asked, his voice low and strained from the illness. "I've been thinking about this for a while. Maybe it's time we stop letting her manipulate us. What if we told her that I've passed away? We could see how she reacts. If she cares about me, if she really cares about us, she'll show some emotion. If she only cares about the money, then we'll know for sure." At first, I was horrified at the idea. How could we do such a thing? It felt wrong, as if we were playing with her emotions. But as I sat there, I couldn't ignore the reality of the situation. Mark's illness had proven that Linda had no empathy, no compassion for her own son. She had used him for years, always demanding money without considering his well-being, let alone his health. "I don't know, Mark," I said, conflicted. "It feels like we're crossing a line." "I understand," Mark said softly. "But Jennifer, this is the only way we'll know her true character. I need to know where I stand with her before it's too late." After a long pause, I made my decision. "Okay, Mark, we'll do it. Let's see if she really cares about her son, or if she's just been using us this whole time." I was nervous, but I knew this was the only way to confront the reality of our situation and make sure we could move on with our lives without her constant pressure. The rising tension was unbearable as I prepared to make that fateful call. This could be the end of everything. The time had come. I picked up the phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed Linda's number. The moment I had been dreading was here, and I had no idea what to expect. Mark and I had decided that this call would be our final attempt to test Linda's true nature. With a deep breath, I pressed send. The phone rang several times before Linda finally answered. "Hello?" Her voice was sharp, as usual, demanding. "Linda, this is Jennifer," I began, trying to keep my voice steady despite the weight of what I was about to say. "I need to tell you something important. Mark has passed away." There was a long silence on the other end, and for a moment, I thought she hadn't heard me. But then Linda spoke, and her words chilled me to the core. "What? So he's really dead, huh?" Her voice was calm, almost too calm. I couldn't believe it. No tears, no shock, just a strange, cold composure. I felt my heart skip a beat. "Linda, aren't you going to say anything? Aren't you even sad? Your son is dead." But Linda's response was a sharp contrast to anything I could have imagined. "Well, if he's dead, then that means his inheritance will be up for grabs, right?" She paused briefly, almost as if she were calculating something in her mind. "I've already been looking into it, you know. 2/3 of his assets are yours, but 1/3 belongs to me. You're going to give it to me, aren't you?" I stood there, stunned, unable to process her words. "What? Linda? I can't believe you. You don't even care that Mark is gone, do you? You're more interested in the money than anything else." Linda's voice grew more insistent. "Don't be ridiculous. I know the rules. I'm entitled to a share of the inheritance, and now that Mark is gone, I expect you to uphold that. I'm still waiting for my $2,700 too, by the way. So, don't think I've forgotten about that." I was speechless. My mind reeled as I tried to absorb the complete absence of any human empathy in her words. I had suspected that Linda was focused on the money, but hearing her openly admit it was like a punch to the gut. She wasn't even trying to hide it. The revelation was as painful as it was eye-opening. Mark had always been kind to her, but she had never seen him as anything more than a source of income. And now, after his death, she was still more concerned with what she could get from him, more concerned about his wealth than the man himself. It was a betrayal I couldn't have imagined. A few days after the shocking phone call, I thought I could finally breathe again. But I was wrong. One afternoon, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Linda standing on the porch, her face hard and determined. "I need to talk to you," she demanded, pushing past me before I could say a word. "I know you're still holding on to the inheritance. It's time you handed it over." My heart raced. The audacity of it all. It felt like she never learned any lesson from her behavior, even after Mark's passing. I was exhausted, but there was no way I was going to let her manipulate me any longer. I stepped back, giving her a long, unwavering stare. "Linda, this has gone on long enough. You've taken enough from us." Just as I was about to say more, a voice from behind me interrupted. Mark stepped out from the hallway, a ghost from the past. Linda froze, her eyes wide as she looked at him in disbelief. "Mark, but, but you were dead," she stammered, unable to mask her shock. Mark's face was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to his voice. "No, Linda, I'm alive, and you've been exposed. The money, the manipulation, it's all over now." The shock on Linda's face was priceless. Her once self-assured demeanor shattered completely. She stood there, speechless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "This is it, Linda," I said, my voice steady now. "We're done. We've cut ties with you. For good." Mark and I walked back into the house, leaving Linda standing in the doorway, frozen in her own web of lies and greed. Linda's reaction to being exposed was as dramatic as it was pathetic. She didn't beg or cry. Instead, she left without a word, her pride too shattered to do anything but walk away. Mark and I didn't look back. That was the last time we would ever speak to her, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. Mark and I spent the next few days reflecting on the choices we had made. Cutting ties with Linda wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For the first time in years, we could breathe freely without the constant pressure of her demands. We both knew that, from that moment on, our future was ours to build without her toxic influence. The relief was overwhelming. I realized just how much energy and stress she had drained from me, from us. Now, we could focus on what truly mattered: our life, our love, and our happiness. Mark's health began to improve after the confrontation with Linda, and the relief of removing her from our lives gave him the strength to recover. No longer burdened by the constant stress of his mother's demands, Mark started to regain his energy, and we both found a sense of peace we hadn't known in years. And then, just when we thought things couldn't get better, I found out I was pregnant. The joy was overwhelming, and we both looked forward to the future with excitement. A new life was growing inside me, and everything felt like it was finally falling into place. We were building a future, one that was free from manipulation, drama, and the constant toxicity that had ruled our lives for so long. The decision to cut ties with Linda had been difficult, but it was one of the best decisions we had ever made. As I watched Mark smile, a calm happiness settling over him, I knew we were on the right path. Together, we would create a peaceful, loving family. Our new beginning had arrived. We were ready to embrace the future, with or without Linda, and this time, nothing would stand in our way.